Okay. Good evening, Heather. We're going to start over here from the Gemara and the Pesach of Megillah Daf Ches Amud Aleph, the top word, the first word of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah, if someone, there's no difference between someone who's Moider Hana B'Chaverei Stam, L'Moider Mimenu Meichel. He could either say that I don't want anything to do with you, or I don't want anything to do with you, L'Gabe food. So, Ella, what's an afkamina between these two nadam? The Risa said, "The kalim she'in oisim behen oichel nefesh." The afkamina is that you cannot use it, you cannot walk through his property, and you cannot use kalim that are not meant for food. Now, Rashi points out that this is dafka for kalim that aren't rented out in his area, but in the area where they actually rent out. So, for example, a keli she'in behen oichel nefesh. Let's say a hammer. You don't use a hammer to eat, or even to prepare food. That's the ikar, right? You don't use it even to prepare food. So in a makom where people just blend their hammers b'chinam, that's not a problem. But if someone in this neighborhood, everyone rents out their hammers, then any money that you save because of someone else is automatically assumed that it could be used for food. So that's the caveat in that Mishnah. Fine. But borrowing a blender is no community. Well, you were mudar hana ma'amichel or mudar hana stam. Juices are affecting who cares? Nobody cares if you're walking through the property. We're not talking that you walk into the guy's dining. We're talking about you just pass through his property. You do a shortcut like in Muncie. Everything Gemara Amarava Hamani Rabilazah the Amar Vitar Asar b'mudar hana. That even Vitar, which is something that nobody is Lashon mevater, that no one's makbar on, everyone's mevater on. For example, a very common example is when a chendani is selling something to a lekeach, someone comes to the store and he throws in a few extra seeds on top of it. Those little extra, just to sweeten the deal, that's considered vitar, and that is usher, according to Rabbi Lezer, usher, if someone's mudar hana on the chendani, on the shop owner, he's not allowed to get those free kernels that he throws in for everybody. So the English invite ein ben adam davos el shan adarim chayav b'achar yusan unadavis ein chayav b'achar yusan. A neder, and what's the difference between neder and a dava? The only difference is that a neder is something that's on me. So if I say I'm going to bring a oila, and something happens, the Gemara is going to go through this, but we'll do this outside. If I say that I'm going to bring an oila and something happens to the oila, I'm a chuyiv to bring another oila. Again, this is talking about oila and a dava. This is talking about if I'm a chuyiv and oila. This is talking about when I decide I have a hergish, I had a good year, I want to bring in a dava to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so I'm going to bring an oila. The same carbon, I said I want the same oil, but the difference is that I say instead of a real I say a rezu. So I say this shepsel is going to be a oil. In that case, when I say specifically this animal is going to be an oil, if something happens to the animal, I'm potter. My oil, my chi of oil is out, is done. How the Indian bata acher zev shaven. But so the Gemara says that means. The Gemara is medayik from the Mishnah that to delay payment of your hischayvis of a oila, that's the same. Tan hasam ezeu neder ha'aymer harei alai oila ezeu nedav ha'aymer harei zu oila. So just an interesting point. Oila it's shlamim also, but the reason why we use oila, I'm not sure why we use oila dafka. Rashi says something, but I'm not sure why we use oila dafka. But it's oila b'huad in the shlamim. Ein mesu ein nignavu ay avdu chayev v'achiyusin. If a neder is lost or stolen, you have to replace it. Davis mesu ay nignavu ay avdu ein ay chayev v'achiyusin. You know what I mean? How do I know that you're not chayev to replace a nedavar? Rabbana, the Tana Rabbanan, it says in the pasuk when someone does smicha on before the mark of the carbon, someone do smicha. The pasuk is v'nirtze loy the chaper olav. That what we're referring to a carbon. So the carbon is the nirtze loy, and it satisfies his chayvus the chaper olav when it's mechaper for him. So this is Rav Shimon is going to learn the pasuk very specifically. Rav Shimon Aimer esha olav chayiv b'achri yusan, ve'eshe'ena olav ena chayiv b'achri yusan. This that it's only fulfills his. He's teaching like this. The nirtza loy lechaper. When is the only time that it's nirtza olav after it's mechaper? So in other words, when is the only nirtza is the lashon that it satisfies his vow? So when do you need a kapara? When do you need to actually be makar al mizbeach in order to satisfy your vow. That's in the matzah of olav. My masha, what do you mean by the word olav? Why olav? Why is that the defining word? Why are we doing from the word olav? Amar Yitzchak Bar Avimi could go into Amar alai alai kaman ta'in achas pei dami. It's like it's hitting on my shoulder. It's in a chayis. It's a burden. I have to do something. It's totally on me. It's not a din in the gav. It's not a din in the chafza. It's din in the gava. It's not like this seh has to be brought to the Beis Hamikdash. It's then that I have to bring a seh to the Beis Hamikdash. So the pasuk, the just a little background on zav and zava. There's two different types of zavas. I'm going to see more in the Gemara in a second. But a zav is a male that sees an emission much like Carrie. It's a little different. We're not so that we don't know the differences today. But a zav that sees two re'iyas within 2 days, he has his title, his status is zav shtei re'iyas, zav bal shtei re'iyas, and somebody who sees 3 within 3 days. So it's any way that happens. It's 3 in 1 day, 2 on the first day, 1 on the second day. It has to be 3, 1, 1, 1. It doesn't matter as long as it's 3 re'iyas within 3 days. Then he has another status, and he's called bal shalosh re'iyas. So the only nafkamina between these two, the Mishnah says, Ella carbon. The only difference is between whether you see 2 or 3, again, 2 in 2 days or 3 in 3 days, is dafka when it comes to a carbon. That the one who sees 3 has to be in carbon, the one who sees 2 does not have to be in carbon. How the Indian mishkav ma'ishav, but to be metala mishkav ma'ishav, which means that if someone's zav sits on 100 different mattresses, 100 mattresses all piled on top of each other, and they're all touching each other. No, there's no air space in between each mattress. All he does is he jumps onto the top mattress and he sits on it. It has to be something that is meant to be sat on. So, for example, a mattress is meant to be laid on and meant to be sat on. It's chair. If he has a whole stack of chairs and he sits on the top chair, as long as there's no hefsek between the chairs, all the chairs become tamei with a very stark tumah of, I believe it's avatuma. But they all have this intense tumah of mishkav and and also they have to count 7 clean days from their last riyah in order to go to the mikvah and become tamei b'nanami. How do we know the Tana Rabbanan? Rav Sima, he says, Mana hakasa shtayim b'karu tamei shalish b'karu tamei. The pasuk has on Parak Tesvav, the second pasuk base, it says, "Dav b'nei Yisrael v'yimata aleim ish chiyeh zav 1 mibisari zayvai tamehu." So after 2 zavais, the pasuk says the word tameh, so he's tameh. The next pasuk says, "V'zayis tia tumas v'zayvai 1 ra b'sari zayvai." That's 2. Hischem b'sari min zayvai. That's 3. And then the next word is tumasai he. He has tumah. So that shows that there's a tumah after a 2 count and tumah after a 3 count. But you see that they're both considered tamei. But there's two categories, a 2 and a 3, and there's 2 categories, but they're both considered tamei. So Manakas shtayim b'karav tamei, shalish b'karav tamei. The pasuk says that we just said the word zav 3 times, and the words of twice, the words of 3 times, and then after each one it says tamei. In other words, if there's only one type of tama, then just say those amount of words and say either after 2 he's tamei or after 3 he's tamei. And then you b'mayit the other one. Right? Obviously, if someone's tamei after 2, he's tamei after 3. So it must be that 2 he has tuma, and 3 he has carbon, and it's not moisiv in his tuma. It's only moisiv in carbon. Who said the loyla carbon 2 has tuma and not carbon. Shalish carbon loyla tuma. Who says you add carbon onto tuma by 3? Maybe 2 is tuma, 3 is carbon, and that's it. Everything about Amrit, does that make any sense? Actually, and in order for him to get to number 3, he had to have seen twice. My father always said, you can never have a second cigarette if you don't have your first cigarette. So the Aveir is the first cigarette. Akitzer, this after 2 riyas, he's tamei. So after a 3rd riyah he loses his tamei? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe 2 is only a carbon. And be marba and be moisif onto shalish tuma, not a carbon. Again, our premise was that we know that there's two different categories, and it's obviously moisif. So we assumed that it's tuma for the two, and then a carbon for the third. But maybe it's a carbon for the two, and then you might say tuma for the third. Now I'm not sure I understand this Havamin. I just thought of this now. The pasuk says tama after the two. So what's the Havamin over here to say tama would not apply to two? Okay, I'm not really sure I understand that, but this is what the Gemara says. Everything it doesn't really make any sense. The Tanya, the Chipar. Okay, I don't understand it. What's the Havamin? Okay, the Tanya the Chipar olav akayim the Fnei Hashem mizayvay. So the lashon mizayvay, it's miktsas zaven. Miktsas zaven being carbon. That's it. But miktsas zaven ain't being carbon. So this pasuk, Tanya v'chipar olav akayim the Fnei Hashem mizayvay. This pasuk is telling you that only some of the guys this applies to, which means you could only have one category of zav bringing a carbon. Okay, so then it must be ra shalish maybe shtayim any maybe. The guy who sees three is the guy who sees three. The guy who sees three brings, and the guy who sees two does not bring. Maybe ra shalish any maybe. This is again like a shikol. I don't want to say klutz kasha, but it's like the same kasha we said before, and the same answer. You can't get to three without two. So that means he had a chiv carbon at two. How do you lose a chiv carbon when he saw a third time? It doesn't make sense. Now we have two different limudim over here working, and the Gemara is going to explain that we need both. Again, we'll go through them in a second. The Rav Simai, we need this the Rasha of Rav Simai to tell you that there's a category 2 and a category 3, not a hurricane, but a zav, right? Rav Simai, I'm sorry, I lost the place. Fine. If I would just have the drush of Rabbi Simai, I would think like a question of what? Of first the 2 gets a carbon and the 3 gets it's a pella that this is really having that 2 gets a carbon and 3 gets tuma. Kamash Milan, Mizaybai, and 3 gets tuma and a carbon. That would be the havmin. Kamash Milan, Mizaybai, that Mizaybai, the only one of them could get a carbon, and if one of them is getting a carbon, we know it's a third, so that means that both of them have to get tuma. The Mizaybai, Layidana, Kamarias, and if we would just say Mizaybai, all I would know is to eliminate some type of ziva, but I wouldn't know what level. So I wouldn't know if a 3 brings a carbon, doesn't bring a carbon, and a 4 does, a 5 and a 6, a 6 and a 7. I don't know where to draw that line. So Rav Simai is the one that told us that we count the psukim and it's 2 and 3. Okay, well, I have to. This mamish bothering me. Okay, Kamashalan. Rav Simai tells us that it's 2 and 3. Now we open up a can of worms. Now that you tell me that mizaybai of the carbon is mizaybai from a carbon is the drasha, we're going to try another one. We're going to find another one and ask what we learn from there. The pasuk says and he counts shivas yamim. The taras the mayim chaim the tihar the tahar. He go after he's matar and he counts 7 days and he goes what's it called, right? So now my drashas bay. What are you going to dash from that mizayvay? Ahumi bayle look at the Tanya. So that drasha we need as follows: the chiyita as of the kashay yisbak mizayvay. We learn out that he can when his tuma is finished, which is tuma, the tuma of ziva, and he does not have to. If he's a mitzayah, for example, the zav is the double winner. He is also a mitzayah, right? If the zav is also a mitzayah, so he does not have to wait till his tayras is healed in order to go to the mikvah for his ziva. Obviously, tayras has its own parsha, but the ziva. But the ziva, it's own sugya. So he could be mitar from his ziva, go to the mikvah, and then deal with his tzaras after. He does not have to wait till the end of tzaras to be taiva for his ziva. So we learn that again. Mizayvai, he has to be tar below mizayvai vinegar. He has to be mitar in order to go to the mikvah for his ziva. His ziva has to finish benan his tzaras also. Now the Gemara is going to ask weiter. Mizayvai v'safar limad. The fact that these words are very close together, we're learning at something else. Limed al zav bal shtei re'iyas shatan sefira shiva. this teaches us that a zav that sees 2 riyas also has to wait 7 days. In fact, I don't need it. I don't need a pasuk. I can learn it out, not from a kavachaymer, but from a binyan av, mamatzinu. Im mitama, at least that's what I understand it, because it's not, he's not learning from a kav. Im mitama mishkav ma'ishav ton sir sheva. If you just like about shalish riyas has tumas mishkav ma'ishav and has to count 7 days. So too, the Baal Shtei is also a Tamar Meshka Ma'ashav. She should also have to count 7 days. Everything Gemara says, no. Shemeres Yavam, I'm sorry, wow, it's a slip, like you end up Shema in the wrong parsha. Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom Techiach. This Indian of Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom. I could say that I never really fully understood it until I had to prepare share. Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom is like this. A woman that's in Nida, this is all Midday Raisa, we do not follow this at all, so this is not Halacha L'Maisa at all. This is all Midday Raisa, before the way we makabel things. A woman becomes a nida. She waits 7 days. They do not have to be clean days. She could bleed throughout the entire 7 days. The 7th day she goes to the mikvah. The 11 days following that, if she sees dam, she's considered a zava katana, and she has to wait 1 more day. She's mitama mishkav v'maishav, so it's a very strong tama. But she's mitama, she has to wait 1 clean day. So if let's say she sees dam on Monday, let's say Monday is her first day of she goes to mikvah, let's say Sunday night. She goes to mikvah, let's say Sunday night. So Monday is the first day of the 11 days. She sees dam Monday morning. So, she's down Monday morning. She has to wait. So she's telling me Monday and then Tuesday. And Tuesday night she goes to the mikvah. So she's yom keneged yom. Now she sees 1 or 2. So she sees Monday and Tuesday. She also only has to wait till Wednesday. And Wednesday night she goes to the mikvah and she's done with the ziva. If she sees 3 times, she calls Zava Gedayla, and then she needs Dayan Akim. And that's what we're makbid on today. In case our wives are Zava Gedaylas and you need Zayin Akim, because for neither you do not need Zayin Akim. You just need Zayin. Okay. Shematama Mishkav Maisha. So Isha, that is Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom, it's Matama Mishkav Maisha. Svira. There's no dinner Svira Sheva. Again, she's Keneged Yom. So she sees Dam on Monday. She goes to mikvah Tuesday night, 1 day. Al Tisma Al Zeh She'af Apisha Shematama Mishkav Maisha V'Liyah Tan Svira Sheva. So don't be surprised when this guy also, even though he's Matama Mishkav Maisha, this Baal Shtei Riyas, he doesn't need Svira Sheva. So therefore, what? Talmud Laimim is Zayva Miktasei Zayva V'Seifer. So therefore, I need a pasuk to be marvahim, and this is the pasuk that we have. Talmud Laimer Mizayva V'Safar. It's a little interesting. Mikta Zayva V'Safar. Even though he only has partial ziva, so he's not a full-fledged zav, but there's only a partial ziva. In that case, also he needs to count. So limeid al zav b'ashtei shetan svirs shiva. Amalei Rapapula Abaya. Now we just had Nizayvai in the pasuk by Karbanas that was memayit b'ashtei from bringing a carbon. So Rapapa has a problem with this. Amalei Rapapula Abaya Maishna Hai Nizayvai. The Marbi Bezav b'ashtei. How do you know? How does this work? That you were marba of Baal Shtei Riyas to the category in the halacha of 7 days or Maishna Hai Mizayva. And how do you know? And that Mizayva the Mamayit Bezav Baal Shtei Riyas, but by carbon you Mamayit Baal Shtei Riyas. Omerlei Abai answered him. If you want to say that the Zayva by 7 days the suffer is also comes to Mamayit. I'm sorry. The pasuk did not have to even mention mizayvah. The pasuk read as is. You would automatically disqualify. You would remove a Baal Shtei Riyas from the halacha of the safar. So the fact that I added the zayvah can't come to be memayit as Baal Shtei Riyas because I didn't need an extra pasuk, an extra word to be memayit something that was never included in the first place. Again, I'll be pashas of the pasuk. There's no reason to include a Baal Shtei Riyas into the suffer, into counting. So I add the word mizayvah to tell you that no, even a partial riyah, not a partial riyah, but even not a 3 riyah, but a 2 riyah is also included. If I didn't want to include him, I could have just not said anything. Now, if I would say no, if he didn't say anything, I would learn that from Kavachayim. Which we said on top of Ramen, that doesn't work. Would tell you that you can't be marba, would tell you not to learn out a Shbal Shtei Riyas from Shalish Riyas. If you want to say that you need the word mizavi to tell you, like we said before, that he only has to be clean from his ziva and not from his tzaras, you could have just said v'chiter hazav. We know we're talking about hazav already, so the word zav is also extra in this pasuk. So if it says v'chiter hazav, that means I only have to be mitar from my ziva and don't say anything more. Mizayve lamali. Why do I need the word mizayve? Limad al zeh, to teach you bal shtei riyas shaitan sefira sheva, to be that the bal shtei riyas has to count 7 days. Now, when I was learning this, it was very tough for me. I did not understand this, and I think I have a shtickle mahalach, so I'm going to try to share it. My question was, Vai didn't really answer anything, because my question was, why was the mashmais of the pasuk by the safar to be mamayit ziva, to be mamayit bal shtei riyas, and the pasha of the pasuk by carbon was to be marba bal shtei riyas? I couldn't understand why. So what I came up with, and if you have something else, please share with me. But this what I understood was like this: the pasha of the pasuk was to be mamayit. It only says. No, it's reading the pasuk. It says it's a din of the safar. I would say it only applies to the biggest ziva case, the smallest chiddush, and therefore it's only about shteiris. But I use mizayvai to be marbe about shteiris. Now that's in pasuk Yud Gimel, in parak Tezvav pasuk Yud Gimel. So that's marbe about shteiris to the din of counting 7. That's just like about shalish riyas. The pasuk Tezvav of 2 psukim later, it says the pasuk of carbon. So now I was just marbe about shtei riyas because of mizayvai. So now if I don't say anything, it's going to api pashas. It's going to be that he also has to bring a carbon. So now I need mizayvai to not bring a carbon. If I would just write both psukim straight, I would be mamayit about shtei riyas from counting 7 and from bringing a carbon. But once I have to be marbe about shtei riyas by counting, I have to be mamayit him by carbon. That's what I came up with. I didn't see it anywhere. I don't know. Okay, right. Let's start the Mishnah. More on halachas of Mitzayra and Geshmaki and Yanim. They say this is the hardest blot in Megillah, so the rest of it is Musayim. Okay, so there's 2 types of Mitzayras. Again, to get a chlota on what a Mitzayra mukhlat is, it took a minute. But a Mitzayra muskar is somebody that the client doesn't know what to do with his tzaras. He's not sure what it is. It's like borderline. So he sends him away, he hides him out, and he has to come back in a week. And as long as there's no changes for the worse, he's tahar. So all he has to do is not get worse. Okay, that's a big effect. The Gemara is going to point it out later. The Gemara is going to use that idea. So all he has to do is not get worse. The Mitzvah Mukhlat is tamei, go out, do the whole spiel, but mishum achlata, and then he has his cleaning process. The muskar comes back after 7 days, and if nothing happened, then the kohen pronounces him clean, etar, and he goes home. He still has to do a tahar process, but essentially he goes home. So the only nafkamina is that they have that the mukhlat, which is the mukhlat is lashon achlata, like guaranteed, right? Like a decisive tuma. That so he has to do priya or prima. Priya it's machlekes if it's uncovering his hair or letting his hair grow, and prima is ripping his clothing. Ein bein tar mitay cheskel the tar mitay cheslet. On the tahara process, the only difference is ella tegalaches v'tziparim. He has to shave his entire body, all the hair on his body, and he has to bring birds. Now the Rashi points out that there's other things going on, but this is all on the 7th day. So the only nafkaminas that we're talking about is nafkaminas on the 7th day. And the 8th day, the carbon, after he goes to the mikvah, the Matzari has a whole other list of things to do, but that's not what we're talking about in this Mishnah. In fact, the Gemara, we'll add in that word because it flows better later. So shiluach is that he gets sent out chutzamach, and tumas bia is that when he walks into a house, everything becomes tummy. So that's a chaymer that's tzeras. I think that's the only time that happens. And they both have this Indian of they have to go chatzmach. They have this Indian that if they walk in the house, it's tamei. Fetting. How do we know the Tanya of Shmuel? But it's a kamei de Rav Huna. The tiara akayin misapachasi v'chibes begal v'tahar v'tahar. So the pasuk that the kohen said, oh, it's misapachas, it's clean, and he has to wash his clothing and go to the mikvah. Actually, I don't think it's with the mikvah. Yeah, v'tar, and he's tar. So the Gemara's mashma, it doesn't say vayitar, and he will be tahar moving forward. In other words, this is his tahara process for the future. So it's mashma that there's something else that he never was tamei from. In other words, a level of tumah that he did not stoop down to. And we're mashma, we're medayik tahar mepriyo prima dimikara. That the original, the prior prima that would have happened before, he did not partake in that. So that's his diak. How you know that a mitzvah muskar does not have prior prima. Fine. Back to zav. According to you, that a zav dichsiv v'chibes because v'tar also it says hasamai v'tar mikara. What level of tumah does he not get from before? Ella, he says it doesn't. That's not that doesn't make sense. Tara hashta militama. So he says Tara hashta militama. He's saying that right now there's an Indian of tahara that comes in. That he's not mitama klicheres beheset afagav the hadar chazi the afagav the hadar chazi like mitama mafreya. So a couple of concepts we have to know over here. A kli cheres is an earthenware keli, and they are not matama by touching. Most kelim, I take a dead sheretz and I put it against a glass bowl. Let's assume glass is not cheres for a second, right? It's probably not. But let's say a metal bowl, right? Simple. Take a metal salad bowl. I take a dead sheretz and I put it against the salad bowl. The salad bowl is now tummy. It's a tummy. The dead sheretz is an av, so the keli is a rishain. You need to title it right there. Now, if I put it into the ear space, nothing happens. It's not touching it. A cheres is punk faket. A cheres, if I put it inside, not even touching the walls, if I put it into the ear space, it's matama. If I would touch it, it doesn't. It's not matama. The chiddush, one of the chumas of, I'm sorry, inside, I don't think so. I don't think avir is matama. It could be I'm wrong, but I don't. I think it's hafuch. I don't think it's ma'aseh. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that it's not talking about avir. But legabe. But like the chaymer of a zav is that if he touches a klichares, has a klichares, he just touches the outside, it's matama. Now, let's say he goes to the mikvah before he's supposed to go to the mikvah. Does not wait until the night. He goes outside, whatever, it's very dark, it's scary, I'm going to go in the afternoon. So he goes in the afternoon. Now, if he doesn't seize the rest of the day, at the end of the day, he has the mikvah, that's it. He has to wait till have shamash, and he's tar 100%. And if he sees again after shkia, or after tzeis, let's just say to keep it simple, that's a new cheshbon, because he had to have the day that he went to the mikveh had to be clean. You can't have a riyah in the morning and go to the mikveh in the afternoon. So it has to be that he waited his 7 days. On the 7th day, he went to the mikveh instead of waiting until the night. Then if he sees that night, it's a new cheshbon. But when he saw already that day. Day number 7, nach the mikveh, he sees again. What happens? Lemafreya, he loses his whole 7 days. So he went to the mikveh in the middle of nowhere. That means everything he touched from the mikveh until his riyah is tamei lemafreya. Because when he was walking around after the mikveh, he was touching everyone's stuff. And then all of a sudden he sees a riyah, all that stuff is tamei. He has to go make phone calls. He has to go figure everything out. The only thing that we're not going to say is lemafreya is this hesed chicheres. The chumri, that like this chomer that we have only by zav, we're not going to say by someone who's toivel and so afterwards. So that's the lashon of tahar. That's tahar from now moving forward. So too by mitzvah, I'm going to use this word v'tara not to tell me that he's that he never had to get involved in priya prima. But another tahara of a chaymer of teras of mitzayra that's not going to come out. The same idea that again a mitzayra that goes to the mikvah on the 7th day. He's supposed to wait to have shabbos. He goes to the mikvah early. He walks into his cousin's house, and then afterwards, all of a sudden his tarash shifts and becomes tamei. He has to call everything in his time. So I would think that everything in his cousin's house is tamei. No, bia lemafreya doesn't happen. Anything that he touched stam is all tamei, but anything the tumah bia you don't have. So now Rav is stuck. Rav doesn't have a place to how do you know priya prima, and the Mishnah says that, right? So Rav needs to come up with another thing. What? Batzarua, thank you. Batzarua Asher Baya. I knew it wasn't like I didn't feel good. Asher Baya Nega. So it says Lagabe. This is talking about priya prima. Who has to do priya prima? Batzarua Asher Baya Nega. So we learn out Misha Tzarase Taluya Begufay Yatza. I'm sorry, Begufay. The pasuk is talking about somebody whose tzaras is totally in his guf. In other words, in order to heal his tzaras, his body has to change, which is who? Mitzayir Muchlat. Yatzazesh ain't tzaras totally begufay elabis b'yamim. The Mitzayir Muskar just has to run out the clock. He just has to not get worse for 7 days. That's his whole thing. The Mitzayir Muchlat has to actually heal. So we're gonna say that it's because it's in Asher Baya Nega, it's in him. It's only the person who's his flesh has to change, and not that he just has to run at the clock. So we're talking about over here the chiv of shiluach that the guy has to go chutz machana. So you should also, it said the nega bayi yitama. So we should learn the same diuk. That's only a guy whose tarash has to heal. It's totally in his guf. He gets a chiv shiluach. V'shein zasa tluya begufa eintan shiluach. The chitei machanami. And if you're gonna say, yeah, it sounds like a good diuk, let's do it. We already learned a Mishnah not like that. Our Mishnah, we just had it on top 6 lines ago. So it can't be that. So that means your drasha, if it doesn't apply to shiluach, it's not accurate. And with the Gemara, you may call the shiluach. The pasuk, if you look back, it says kol yemei ashenaga bay. So even though it has a bay which is a miyat, it has a kol yemei which is a rebay. So it ends up being a wash, and it has and it's marba mitzayir muskal shiluach. Ihachi tigalachas tzipayim my time alay. Why does he not have to do tigalachas tzipayim on the tahar side of it? Diktani ein bein tar mitoich esker. The tar mitoich achlet elatanaga mitzipayim. Amarabai amakra v'yatzakayin amachotz lamachana. V'hine nifra nega tzaras. Misha tzaras tuli begufa berefuas yatza zesh ein tzaras tuli berefuas ela b'yamim. Same idea, but just with another halacha. That the only time that the kohen has to deal with somebody to do this process of tigalachas v'tzipayim, that's only somebody whose tzaras has to actually heal, and not someone's just running out the clock. Okay. Shkayach for joining, and Mitzvah Shem, Monday night. Okay.